Hello, and welcome back to plantcare.club, where we care about your plants. My name is Fred, and on this show, we talk about your plants. Whatever you've got, we'll do product reviews and we will answer your questions. So if you have any questions, head over to plantcare.club and we can answer them there. Today, I have been slacking so far. We haven't had anything out in a little bit. So today we are going to put something out about when to pinch your plants, pinch them or cut them back. The typical phrase or terminology used in a greenhouse is that you're going to pinch the plant or maybe give them a trim. Anything along those lines is what we would refer to when you actually go to cut the ends of the plant wherever the plant is growing. So, as we usually do, we're going to start with how this method is used within a greenhouse or in a nursery, and then how you can actually apply that to the plants in your own home or garden. Okay, so as I just explained, we all know what pinching is. You're just cutting the new growth on the plant. Now, why do you do that in a greenhouse? Well, the first stage that you might do it is when the plant is very small. It comes in the cutting size and you're growing it out into a liner. You're trying to have it set roots and you're trying to form a habit of the plant. Now, a lot of annuals, they end up growing in a straight line up and they'll just continue to compete and search for the sunlight. So they just grow straight up towards the sun. The more fertilizer and sunlight that they get, the higher that they'll end up growing. Some varieties and some types of plants will start to branch out on their own, but many of them will not. And in that case, you're going to want to pinch your plants. So, going one level deeper here, in this stage, some growers in a greenhouse will use growth regulators and they can spray them on top of the plants. And what that does is it tells the plant, instead of focusing on that one node, that one growth point that is coming out of the plant, that it tells the plant, don't grow just from that point. I want you to branch out on the sides. Now, some varieties of plants will respond. Some varieties of plants will not respond as well to that. It just depends on what you're dealing with and what you're working with. Most of the time, though, when the plant is in that liner stage, it's a great idea to go through, give it a pinch, keep that plant a little bit shorter, as well as encourage it to bush out to the sides. So right now we are in the midst of poinsettias, and that's a good example that we can use today. When you get a poinsettia cutting in, it will have one main node of growth. Now the plant will begin to shoot roots. It's going through a liner, or if you're going direct stick, it's going straight into the 6-inch pot. It's beginning to grow and beginning to put on new leaves and grow from that one node. That's when you want to pinch the head off of it, and it will begin to spread out new shoots on every side, or really every leaf that comes out from the main stem at that point. That's what gives the plant more body. The next time that you might use a pinch is in the finishing stage. So when you have a larger plant already and you're trying to make it shape or put it in the right shape of what you're looking for. A classic one for this is calibrachoas or million bell. So with some of these hanging baskets, let's say you're trying to keep it within the realm of saleability. You don't want it to all be lopsided to one side. You don't want it to be super stringy out one way and it has no growth on the other side. The way that you can do that is to pinch the plant and trim off a lot of the growth points on one end of the pot, or for a few of the plants there, it's going to start to bush out on the opposite side. Another example would be, let's say, a pothos hanging basket. If you want to use a houseplant example, a pothos hanging basket, if you pinch the ends of the growth points, it's going to start to branch out on the sides, and that's kind of the body, that's the shape that you want to have once it gets into the actual retail center. Plus, it's much more manageable for the grower. If you do a proper pinch on the plant, you can then use some different growth regulators. It's easier to get into a sleeve. You can fit more plants onto a rack. Therefore, more plants go to a store at once, making it more economical, all of those pieces. If plants grow crazy wild, sometimes the customers like that kind of a look because it has so much growth. They look really vibrant and crazy and great. Like it's going to perform in your garden or your home, but it's very expensive for the grower to get it to the store or for the store to sell it on its own. There's a lot of time and effort that really goes into that. The last example here that I'll use is if you are trying to hold product longer. So let's say you have a greenhouse and you are planning to sell some plants on the first week of May, but the weather gets really bad and you're not going to be able to sell those plants until the second week of May. In that scenario, you might try to pinch some of the plants in order to slow them down and tell the plant, don't grow too fast, stay within your lane, stay within this pot, the ring of the pot, or stay within the shape that I want you to be in, and set them back a little bit because you know that your sale date is going to be 1 week or 2 weeks later or something like that. Generally, if you are pinching most plants, it will take a week to 2 weeks or possibly longer. I'm thinking more annuals when I say a week to 2 weeks. But if you use some tropical varieties, it's going to take much longer for the plant to grow out of that pinch and make it less obvious that the pinch had just happened. If you're ever wondering, like, has my plant really been pinched, or where was it affected when it was younger, when it was first grown? You can dig through the new growth and try to find some of the old growth that's way back closer to the stem, closer to the roots, and see if you can see any ends of the plant that have been kind of chopped off somewhere. Okay, so that's all for the greenhouse or in a nursery. You know what? I'll give one more example for a nursery, like a very, very classic one. If you are looking at a Ficus lyrata standard, so these are like the lyrata trees or fiddle leaf fig trees. The way that these are usually grown is there's one plant put into a pot and it's encouraged to grow straight up, depending on the size of the plant that's going to be sold. So if it's a 10-inch, maybe they're going to grow it to 36 inches or 36 inches. That seems reasonable. If it is going to be in a 14-inch or a 12-inch pot, maybe they want to get it to like 4 feet, 5 feet tall. And then they pinch the head off of that plant. And at the same time, they take a lot of the leaves that are lower on the stem and they strip those leaves off, leaving, let's say, 5 or 6 leaves at the very top of that plant at that point. So what you're now left with are 4 or 5 options for that plant to start to grow out of. They're going to pick where the leaf meets the actual stem of the plant, and they're going to start to grow out of that point. And that's what gives you the shape and the body at the very top of a Ficus lyrata standard, that gives you like this ball at the very top of the mound and the stick that goes straight down. You got to strip the leaves off the bottom, encourage the plant to bush out at the very top. And once all of those new growth points have come out, let's say it's 12 inches or 24 inches, depending on what size plant you're working with, then they can go ahead and sell the plant. That whole process can take a long time. The growing straight up, the first before the pinch, that won't take as long. It's the once you pinch the plant and then waiting for that next set of growth to come out, that's what can take the most amount of time. And sometimes it requires a second pinch on all of the growth points that are coming out there. Some of them might be faster than other ones, so you might have to go through and pinch here and there just to keep it within the right shape. Okay, so that's all for a greenhouse or a nursery. How do you apply this to your own home? The example is really the same. If I'll start with the fiddly fig. If in our example, we've got some in at my mother's house. I know that there's one there, and some of the arms are so long. So it's 3, 4 years old, and it's never been pinched, and the arms coming out are really, really, really long. So long that we had to use fishing line to help hold it up, because if not, the whole arm was just going to fall onto the ground. It's that long. So in that situation, you might want to go through and pinch to keep it within the right shape, or to help it because it can't support its own weight, something like that. If a plant is getting too tall, so you could look at something on a trellis. Let's say you've got a certain type of philodendron that's on a trellis, and it reaches the top of the trellis and it keeps on shooting up higher and higher. You might want to pinch that. All that it will do is encourage more growth from the bottom of the plant coming up again, and it's going to give you the right body that you're looking for there, make it a little bit more manageable. You might want to pinch if it's only growing in one direction and you want it to spread in other directions. So like a pothos hanging basket is a good example here, where if it's stretching out, only one arm is really stretching out. There are some other arms that really aren't moving at all. Pinch the end of that arm, and whether it's at the tip of it, only taking off one leaf, or if you want to go all the way back to the pot and pinch it there, either way is totally fine, and you can get away with either one of them, depending on what kind of shape you're really looking for. If they're overgrown, that's another great example of just like, go ahead and pinch this stuff. You could do it in a garden as well. If you have some spots that are a little bit taller than others, or plants are growing towards a driveway when you don't want it there, just go through and pinch that off pretty quick. And with outdoor annuals, they're going to grow back very quickly. The last one would be propagation. So let's use the pothos hanging basket example again. If you take that plant and you go ahead and pinch it on let's say the last leaf. So you've got one leaf in the growth point and you pinch it off right there. You could go ahead and stick that straight back into some other soil and try to propagate your own plant. Some people use water in order to propagate it as well. I'm sure you could look something up online to see exactly how that's best done. Another good example of that would be Nanook, Transcendia Nanook. That's a great plant that is really easy to propagate if you pinch off the end. Sometimes it will grow so quickly in the greenhouse. We'll actually go through, just pinch off the ends of the plant and stick them right back into the pot that they were growing out of, because they root so easily in that soil. They'll actually set your roots, take off, and now all of a sudden you have a bunch more plants in the same pot. And it really didn't, you didn't have to go through the whole propagation process again, from little liner to planting it into something bigger. You could just go straight in. Last piece of advice that I want to give you, though, is a saying in the greenhouse: roots and shoots don't mix. So this means that if you're trying to root a plant and encourage it to grow its roots, and you pinch at the same time, that plant's going to be too much in shock. I'll go back to the poinsettia example. First, you plant your poinsettia into a liner or into its finished pot, depending on which method you use. You wait for the roots to develop. The roots have to be there, and the plant has to be secure in its own root system. It has to be able to draw up nutrients through those roots. It's got to be a strong, positive plant that's ready to move on to the next stage. Once it has that roots and the anchor, then you can go through and pinch. And with poinsettias, that can be up to a month, depending on the variety, depending on the type, sizing. But if you do it too early, if you go ahead and say, okay, the roots have been developing and I can see a couple of them, they're just shooting out, it's been a week, I'm going to go through and pinch this, that plant goes straight into shock, and it's really hard to bring it back from that. Okay, that's all that I got for today. So if you have any questions, once again, plantcare.club, and you can ask any questions over there. Happy to help with whatever you're looking for. And that's it. As I mentioned in our last show, we're working on kind of summer hours. So hoping that you're able to get some more time off in the summer and we're doing the same thing too. So hoping that we can send out a podcast every other week, something like that. And by the time the fall rolls around, then we're going to get right back into a weekly production schedule. That is the plan. Anyway, enjoy your day, and thank you for listening.